SMT Nation, we are back. Nation, I have a document that someone claims is the spectrum utilization strategy for T-Mobile moving forward. I don't know. I can't verify. I'm not sure if this is real. I don't know if this is an actual internal T-Mobile document. It might be. I guess we'll find out at some point. I don't want to tell you guys how it would happen, but we'll find out eventually. But it's really interesting to play the game of, is this real or whatever. But really what I want to look at is what has happened. Right? I can look at the last year or so, last 2 years, kind of see if this is unfolding the way that this document claims. And then looking forward, we can kind of see if it all makes sense. I guess we can kind of see if this is realistic, right? All right, so let's go ahead and do that in this video. What we're looking at, guys, is what's going to happen to all the spectrum, the airwaves that are on LTE 4G, and their transition over to 5G. We know that transition is going to happen. So let's take a look at all these different bands that T-Mobile has. All right, so for starters, the Band 2, the PCS, the 1900 megahertz, which T-Mobile operates as Band 2 and LTE, and N25 as 5G. Currently, what I'm seeing across most of the country is 10 megahertz as Band 2 LTE. And then typically we see 20 megahertz as N25 on the new radio side. Beyond 2027, it looks like all of it's going to be on 5G NR. In fact, looking kind of in the near term, there's going to continue to be the kind of transition and the refarm, and only select markets will likely have some of the LT still there, right? And I think there's probably some unique, circumstances within those markets, like, certain number of legacy handsets and certain types of requirements with certain devices, But anyways, that's kind of the first thing. The next thing is Band 66, AWS, the 1700, 2100 frequency. Well, in 2024, we started seeing the move from LTE to 5G, and, we started seeing that last year, I believe, where you saw N66 instead of Band 66. And it hasn't been a big thing, right? It's not an impactful thing, but we're seeing it. It's a little bit more gentle, more subtle, more gradual than the 1900 megahertz refarm that we see with Band 2 to N25. Obviously, there's less bandwidth there, and it's a higher frequency. So, if they were more gradual in this, it obviously gives the tower grid the opportunity to densify in time where they build more tower sites and other things. So it kind of makes sense that that's a little bit of a slower move. All right, next we have the Band 71, the 600 megahertz, the low band. Most has already been moved from 5G or over to 5G from LTE. With respect to that configuration, typically we're seeing 10 or 15 megahertz of the 5G side and only, 5 megahertz to the LTE side. Some areas are all 5G from what I understand. People have been seeing that. Some areas, they actually lease additional spectrum. So you see that the channels are a little bit deeper under those circumstances. So by 2026, it's probably going to be 600 megahertz, all on the NR side. Some devices will have trouble connecting to low-band carriers on T-Mobile. With respect to Band 48 and CBRS, this one's kind of like, I guess it's an afterthought, right? But it is mentioned here in the spectrum plan. So it's unlicensed, lower power. It's currently deployed as LTE, if anybody is deploying it. And, that's probably more like private networks, enterprise, business-grade solutions. It's not really important to T-Mobile. Band 26, obviously that was part of the T-Mobile and Sprint merger, was former Sprint spectrum that they were supposed to sell to Dish. They couldn't afford it, couldn't buy it, so it went to auction, no bidders. What they do with it from here, who knows? There's TBD to be determined. Got nothing there. And that's held up pretty true, right? So far, everything we've discussed in this video on this map or whatever, it's all held up pretty good. That continues with Band 41, the N41 piece, 2500 megahertz, all on 5G currently. This is their 5G UC layer, right? That's all been on 5G for a couple years now, right? I think as late as last year we did see some LT in some places, but it's all 5G now, right? There's also mention of an unknown band here in the 6 gigahertz range, 5.9 to 7.1. That to me looks and sounds like Wi-Fi operations. So maybe they're expecting some kind of unlicensed spectrum becoming available there. I think about fixed wireless in that case. I think about 5G exclusivity because, I mean, it doesn't make sense to move a new band into LT only to migrate it to 5G. So that one's kind of like too much unknown, I think, to speculate. Now, kind of to address the elephants in the room. The first elephant being millimeter wave, 24 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz, 39 gigahertz. It's mentioned here on the plan. It's definitely in there, but it's got it ranging from 2023 all the way into the future. I mean, we really have not seen much millimeter wave for T-Mobile. So this one, it's kind of one of those things like, okay, it's mentioned. We know they have licenses, but, how they're going to build this, when are they going to build it? It's something we have to wait and see. But it is there in the plan, according to this document. All right, the other bigger elephant in the room is C-band N77, the 3700 frequency. The map shows end of 2024 having, being mentioned here in the map. However, we really haven't seen it. There hasn't really been a substantial build of any sort. I mean, we're on the precipice of 2025 here, so it's going to have to be a show and prove moment for T-Mobile. I went through the Spectrum Omega website and I looked at areas where they have the C-band licenses for N77, and they've got a couple of markets, Seattle and Phoenix, where they have 40 megahertz in the B block. They have one single county where they have 60 megahertz of bandwidth. That's Albany and Sarasota Springs. You guys can comment down below if you're in any of these areas. They've got 3 of the C block sub-blocks in those places. C-band is 20 megahertz sub-blocks. And then they've got 40 megahertz in most of the metro areas. So like the metro areas in Texas, for example, I saw San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, right? They've got 40 megahertz there. The metros in Ohio, so like Cincinnati, Columbus, Toledo, Cleveland, those parts. North Carolina, very similar, right? Metro areas, South Carolina, metro areas. You'll see the same 40 megahertz configs in Chicago, New York City, right? So I'm talking about big metros. Like 3/4 or more of the state of Florida have 40 megahertz of C-band. And then it really looks to be like a situation where it's like market share dominant. So like if you look at the tri-state area, they've got 40 megahertz there. Southern California, Central California. Some of the other metros I saw 40 megahertz was like Denver, Vegas, Kansas City, Missouri, Indianapolis, Minneapolis, like all these metro areas, right? Cities. And another place they just don't have it, right? Outside of those metros. So all of the 3400 frequencies, the DoD N77 is gone, sold, traded for N41 licenses, right? They've done that all year. But here's kind of what we're looking at, right? After 2027, T-Mobile's basically a 5G company, right? They're not really, there's nothing left for LTE. There's going to be just limited markets with any LTE, if at all, for that side of the network. And then what that brings is network efficiency. And unfortunately, people who are on LTE only phones, like they're going to have to get 5G phones to have full coverage from T-Mobile, like N71, the low band carrier, or N41, the capacity carrier, or N25, also a capacity carrier with some reach too. So like, here's how I'm kind of looking at it by year, according to this map and kind of how things are lining up. The 600 megahertz is all moving to NR. Most of it already has. And that's like 2024, 25. Also in 2025, the PCS, the band 2, the N25, all that 1900 is moving to NR, right? That's happening like in the next 12 to 18 months based on what we can see and kind of the patterns from T-Mobile. And then 2026, that's going to be like the year for AWS to make its move from mostly in LTE to mostly in NR and 5G, right? And it's just that's the way it seems to me, and that seems plausible. So the person who sent this to me, I have no idea. I don't know how to verify if this is real. I don't really care. But it's fun to look at this map and see how some of the things on this map that were slated for happening in 23 and 24 did happen, which makes it very plausible that the rest of it could hold up true as well. And based on internal contacts I've had with, former T-Mobile employees over the years, all this really does seem to line up. And I know it's very possible some of you may have been employees at T-Mobile or currently are, and you kind of lay low and you're anonymous and all those things. That's perfectly fine. This may or may not be a real document, but at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. The principles of this migration, the refarm process for these engineering plans, is all shrouded in logic and reasoning. These things could definitely happen in these timeframes. So, the spectrum usage plan, the migration plan can vary from market to market. There's always going to be those types of things. But I think there is a version of this that actually holds up to be quite accurate. 2024 is done. 2025 is next. 26 is next. And there we kind of see where things are going. We can come back to this video and see how well this map held up to the hands of time. What do you guys think about all this? Obviously, the LTE to 5G transition is upon us, and that move needs to be watched, especially if you don't have a modern 5G phone, but it's interesting. What do you guys think about this? Sound off in the comment section below. You all the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.